All right, welcome to the Python study group. We're ready to go on the exciting world of dictionaries. And what we're going to do today is we're going to cover the main topics for the pages that were assigned. And then I'm going to give an application because, you know, if we don't give an application that's DFIR, then who cares, right? And we're going to learn how to deserialize, is a fancy term, of taking a JSON object and turning it into a dictionary so we can work it within Python, okay? So let's do the quick summary of the main concepts that I think you should know. All right, so the first thing is with dictionaries. And I said this before, and the book told you that dictionary is a key value pairing, right? A combination of key value pairs, that's all that it is. And it's super, yeah, not a dictionary like in a definition of words, which is kind of an odd name, right? But it's a key value pairs. So let me show you here. How do you define a dictionary? So let's call this dictionary, because why not? Dictionary. And we use this squiggle. Oops, I did wrong type. Dictionary. There we go. All right, so this is an empty dictionary, okay? So if we put type here, right? We get dictionary. You saw that? And I'm using a type a lot, and I'm using it lately in the classes because you'll find a lot of usage, understanding what your variables are, what the class of your variables are, right? So dictionary, that's easy, right? So let's put a couple of, let's make another one. Let's call it person. So another way you can initialize a dictionary is by actually putting stuff in it. Okay, so let's come here with name. That's the key. Right? And then over here, we're gonna put the value, which is my name. So I'm gonna use myself an example, comma. Then we're gonna come up with last name, right? And then my last name, okay? And then we're gonna come with, let's put a city, okay? And Orlando, right? And one last one, we're gonna put a zip, right? And right, so you notice there, right? And we're gonna put type, make sure we're all good. Dictionary. Notice how I didn't put any single quotations on the zip code number here, right? And the reason for that is because it's an integer, right? And this is kind of refresher from previous classes. When you use quotations or double quotations, it's because you're defining a string or a series of characters. So that's why you're gonna use that. That's the indicator. In this case, we have a number, so we put it as a number. If I put quotations here, then it would interpret it, accept it as a string, and that means that you can subtract anything from things that are not numbers, okay, or add or make any math operations on strings. Just to keep that in mind. All right. So how do you access the values in here? So on list, we addressed it. We got it by the address of the location in the list from 0 to whatever it was, or in reverse, -1 to the end. In dictionaries, we do it based on the key name. So if I look for person and I look for name, it takes out that value and shows it to you, right? If I put, again, one more, person, right? And I look for zip, just as I wrote it. And you notice here, it gives me an integer, right? It's not in quotation because it's not a string, right? So that's pretty straightforward, right? Let's say we take name, a variable called name, and we're gonna assign the value for name within our dictionary. Let's do that, right? And if I see what's inside name, there's my name. And if I put the type of name, it's a string. So I'm showing you this because it shows that the type, I mean, you can extract the values and put them in other variables, so you can use them any way you see fit, and it will bring the type of the value with it as well. Okay, so that's another good teaching point.
I have a question about variables. Actually, it's in the chat. Is there a command to list all variables that are presently in use?
I don't know it. the debugger can do that for you, but honestly, I don't know the top of my head. If I could on the interpreter here in the IDLE, I do not know. Maybe somebody in the class that knows a little bit more than me. When I'm coding, I usually keep track of kind of the variables as I'm using on my script. But when you debug, and we'll talk about that in the future, what the debugger does is it goes to your script and it shows you how values are being updated in which variables line by line, line by line. So that way you can troubleshoot any issues. So you can see the variables being populated, not populated, or whatever it is. But like a command, I don't know it. But I'll have to research that. So let me write it down. Honestly, I don't know. Command to list.
Jerry writes, you can use locals. Thank you. I don't know if I'm saying that.
Oh, okay. All right, let's see.
Something
No arguments? No arguments?
So you can use locals, parentheses.
Oh, there we go. Oh, look at that. Fantastic. See? Good thing we have people that, you know, like Jerry that really know what they're doing. This is great. So look at this. You have here, you have a dictionary and you have the values on it, and then you have name and the values on it. So I like this a lot. I learned something really useful today. That's the good thing about being a study group. Locals. Let me write it down here so I can read more up on it. Fantastic. Love it. And that's another thing. You have local variables and you got global variables, which we'll discuss also later, which is variables that can operate outside of the scope of that you're working on. But we'll discuss that later. All right. So we got that part. We learned something new here. And the book was saying that if you look for the concepts of person, that in Python, the insertion order is not retained. And that is true and false at the same time. It's true because on previous older versions of Python, when this book came out, that was true. It didn't keep the insertion order. So you could put the things as I put them in that order: name, last name, city, and zip. And when you try to call them out, it will give it to you in any order. But nowadays, that's not the case. So I put a link in the Discord, which has some details on why that's the case and why you should treat your code still as if there was no insertion order there. So that's for later reading. So just keep that in mind. I wanted to clarify that. Let's look at the vowels for PY, which is one of the exercises that we had for the chapter. Let me make this, put it on the left, on the right, and then put this on my left. All right, so you can see here, what we're doing here is initializing a list with our vowels, right? Asking for a word to search vowels for, and starting here an empty dictionary, just as I did over here, okay? Then we created some keys and initialize it with a 0, right? So now our dictionary has all those keys initialized. And then what we did was we went looking for letter in word, and if that letter that values is iterating was contained in the list, then it will go and find the proper key and increment it by 1. All right, so it's gonna add 1 and take it and put it in, add that addition, put it inside the value space in that dictionary, right? And then this is a part that I found that I think is really important. This is what I want to highlight. This here, okay? This method, items, when it's applied to a dictionary, it will give you the keys and the values in these two variables, right? And we could call these whatever we want. K and V is just what we decided, but it could be whatever it wants, right? Let's run it once, because then I'll give you another example of how to just pull keys and just how to pull values. So let's run it. Let's put my name here. Oh, if I didn't click on it, there we go. Right, look at that. So A was found 0 times, 1, 3, 1, 0. Okay, now I'm gonna comment this How much time we got? I got 3 more minutes before I teach you the part that I really want. All right, so let me just do it this way. Oh, I can't forget. This sorted here, this variable for sorted, it will take your dictionary and put it in order. And again, that's what the book taught. But like I mentioned, new installations of Python, I mean, you might not really even need it because it's already, it keeps the insertion order, assuming you inserted them in this order. But if you insert it randomly yourself, run sorted on your dictionary and your method, and it will put them in order. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully that makes sense.
Could you write that in Discord after class, just so?
Yeah, the sorted part.
Like the things about what the book might be dated on.
Okay, I will. Yeah.
And also,
yeah, okay.
And while I've interrupted you, if I could ask a question.
Go ahead.
Does the comma cause the interpreter to know that there is set data, or is it just the fact that found is equal to a dictionary in the K comma V?
So you see here how I took the comma out and it's invalid syntax, right? Why is that? Because when you apply the method items to found, the resulting output is going to be 2 arguments, right? It's going to expect 2 variables to receive the output of items. Does that make sense? I'm using really like coding terms to kind of familiarize you with the terminology. What that means is that I say, okay, this is my dictionary found, my method, my dot notation method items, and we can you can Google that. Put Python dictionary items and the parentheses, and it will explain to you that when this is applied, items is applied to the dictionary, it will give you 2 outputs. It's gonna give you the key and the value of that key, if that makes sense, okay? And that's why you need the commas, because it separates them. It's 2 different variables to receive that data. Did that help, more or less?
1 if that helped, 0 if it didn't.
Say what?
I'm asking the group 1. It wasn't. If somebody in chat asked. So
ones?
we have
Okay.
some 1s. I think it made sense.
Okay, right then. I was gonna show you, like, Google it for you, so you can also see how the process. But I want to save time because I want to really discuss the actual application of this. And with that in mind, I'm not gonna discuss it now because we're short on time. But you see here, found keys. Instead of using found items and you put found keys, you could only get the keys. Or you put all find dot values over here, then you will only find the values. And obviously, since keys is only 1 argument, then you would have to kind of take one of these out. But I can go into that in detail in Discord. And please, if this didn't make sense, go into Discord, make a question, and then I'll build on it. Because what I want to show you is the application of it. All right, so before I show you the application, I just want to underline one more thing. Remember, this is our dictionary, right? And it was initialized, right? There is a way, and I had to discuss this. There is a way, we're gonna save this, no. There is a way to be able to put keys with values inside a dictionary without having to do initialize all the values you expect, right? And it is called, I need to show you that. Set default or default, all right? This little thing here, all right? And the book explains it in great detail, but this is really useful because you're able to, with set default, if I receive a key that is not in my dictionary, then it will put it in and then put the value, in this case, the default is 0, but it will put it in as it's coming in, okay? And then if you see this code is explained in the book, if the letter is not seen before, but it needs to be in there, it's not in the dictionary, it will set the default to 0. And then the next line, we're gonna add 1 because we found a vowel. Does that make sense? And again, I don't wanna explain the whole script because the books explained it, you should know this, but I wanna underline the set default, super useful. If the value is not in your dictionary yet, and it needs to be there, it will initialize it. In this case, we're initializing it with 0 because we're doing a counter, but you might want to initialize it with something else. I mean, it depends on what you're coding, what you're trying to accomplish. So initialization, like putting your keys and your values, instead of having to think about them from beforehand, you can just set them as you need it using the set default functionality. Does that make sense? If it makes sense, give me a 1. And if it didn't, this is an indication for you to go back into those pages and review that material, because I'm kind of pointing out what I think are the most important parts. Okay. All right. Let's go into application. So I put in Discord a file, and I'm going to move from the IDLE for now. I'm going to move into my own, the one that I like to use, Code Runner. And I'm using Code Runner because I want to show you the actual contents of the file. This file comes from my sample data of a Discord application that I did some research on, kind of a year ago, but it's still applicable. And let's open one of the JSON files. All right, so this one is called manifest.json. Hopefully you can see that the zoom is good. And what do you notice here? Let me see if I can make it bigger here. View. I don't even know how to make this larger. Whatever. And I did not want to hide that. Well, this here, you know how it starts with a squiggly bracket, and you see a value here, or a key and semicolon, and then a value. And you go, how do you know that's a key? Well, because the semicolon is the indicator, right? Semicolon, right? Or colon? Oh, it's colon, right? Colon, yeah. I'm showing you this because this is JSON as it will look in real life in your cases. You will look at it, and just by looking at it, you can tell, oh, this is JSON. This is key value pairs. Here's your key, and here's your value. And interestingly enough, this value is actually a key for another value, and then comma, and then your next key and your next value, comma, next key, next value. The colons will tell you left is the key, to the right is the value. And notice how this first one here, it has key, and the value starts another key, and then a value. So it could be nested. You can have key, and inside the value, another key and a value pair. It could be nested. You can be going down that road really, really deep. So just keep that in mind. It could be nested key values, kind of inception type of thinking process, okay? The key thing to think about JSON is designed, it's called JavaScript object notation, and it's designed to be read by computers and be read by humans. And this you can read. Look at one here, for example. Let's see here. Email cache, and here is an email address. You can read that. There's one for there's the date one. Let me see. I think it's timestamp. There we go. Timestamp. I have, instead of trying to remember from memory, look at my notes. I have one here for. Yeah, there's one for timestamp around here. Well, this is the point. When you look at this stuff right here, and you see here your squiggly brackets, immediately think of dictionary. Now the question is, how do I go about taking this Python, which obviously looks like a dictionary, and putting it inside my script from JSON to Python as a dictionary? That process is called deserialization, okay? And let me show you something here. Two things I'm gonna show you, all right? Before I show you that, the first thing I'm gonna show you is the script I made to actually parse this file. Discord json.py. Okay. The first thing you do is you import the JSON libraries because you're gonna work with JSON files, okay? And the next thing you do is you open that file. And this is open the same way as we opened our text file previously. Opens the same way, all right? And this is the part that's really important. You're gonna call JSON, right, your library, and you're gonna look for the load method within it, okay? Load method. And you're gonna take the file that you just opened, that handler for that file that you opened, and put it here. And this functionality, this method load, will take that Python object and turn it into a Python dictionary object. And in this case, we're gonna, the dictionary variable is gonna receive it. Remember, you can call this anything you want, okay? In this case, I call it dictionary. Okay. And in this case, I'm gonna run the script now. I'm just gonna print the type to make sure that the deserialization came across properly. So let's do it real quick. There we go. So we opened the file, we loaded that file through the JSON library into our variable, and the type is dictionary. Perfect. Teaching points. Number one, you see these hashtags here? Those are comments, okay? This triple single quotation is also indicates comments. And I said this before, I wanna re-emphasize it. Hashtags or pound signs are to comment lines, triple quotations to comment blocks. That means that the script, as of now, only executes the highlighted part, those first 5 lines. The rest, the script will ignore. Anything that's preceded by those tags, pound signs, or triple single quotation will not be executed by the interpreter. Okay. Now, let's go and print that dictionary, okay, to the screen. As you noted, it is a class dictionary, and now the data you saw in the file that you saw here in this file, now we have it all imported into our variable as a dictionary. It deserialized it. That being said, this is the second part. Let me make this large. When you use the load method, it's gonna take an object that's coming from a file, like a path object or something like that, and it's gonna go, and if it's a JSON object, it's gonna turn it into a dictionary. If it's a JSON array, it's gonna turn it into a list. If it's a string, it's gonna turn it into a str string in Python, and so forth. I'm showing you this because you might have on your file a list, not a JSON, a list. I'm sorry, not a dictionary, a list. And you can take that list and import it into your script using json.load. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me a 1. If not, give me a 0. Okay, all right, perfect. And I'm saying that because right now I'm using json.load for obviously a JSON file that's into a dictionary, but kind of like the homework I'm gonna give you, you're gonna be loading a list that has dictionaries in it. So you're gonna use load the same way, okay? Load here, when you apply load to your file that you're opening, your file handle here, if it's a JSON object, it will turn it into a dictionary. If it's an array, it's gonna turn it into a list, and so forth, as you see here on this on the image. Okay. We will not discuss this right now, but you can deserialize, and you can also serialize with Python. You can take your dictionary and turn it back into JSON, right? And the method is called dump, json.dump. Usually, at least in my forensic work, I don't do the serialization. I don't, because usually I'm looking at stuff and I'm putting and deserializing for me to process and see what's there and give a report. I'm usually not creating a JSON to give to anybody else, just for the examiner part of it. But in the future, if we think we need that, I mean, we can discuss that in the future. But for at least for just doing parsing, you need to understand what load does, right? That's load, json.load. There's another one called json.loads or load string. And that's when you're trying to load a dictionary that's been the type. Let me type it here so it can make more sense. Imagine if I put, I'm gonna put the variable x, and I'm gonna put this here. What am I doing here? If I run type on the x, what do I get? Can anybody gander a guess and put it on the chat? If I run type on x, what do I get? Precisely, I get a string, right? I'm not initializing a dictionary, right? I'm just getting a string. And even if I put here, for example, something like this, like we did previously, name, and then my name. Actually, this won't work because I need to put, there we go. This will work, right? This will still be a string. But by me visually, I can tell, instead of it's a small dictionary, a key and a value pair, I can visually tell it. But it's a string, right? And since I'm not an interpreter, I need to actually send it to the screen. Print. Right? You see it here on top. It's a string, right? So this is the part I'm actually deviating from my class plan, but since I already started explaining it, I thought this would be useful to know. Hopefully I'm doing this right. I'm going off script now. All right, just give me a sec. Oops, there we go. Oh, sorry about that. Kind of obvious, right? You cannot call a library if you haven't imported it first. All right. What am I doing here, Ro? Okay. Yep. Property name in double quotes. This is what happens when you go off the script. You get my decode. I'm writing something wrong. Property name in double quotes. All right, let me do it the other way. I'm gonna try this one more time. If not, I'm gonna drop it because, and I'll do it in Discord properly because again, I went off script and that's what happens. There we go. All right, so look at this. We have a string, right? And I have the type, so it prints it out. Then I take loads, I take that string and it turns it into a dictionary. Does that make sense? So load string, will take a string that has a dictionary in it and turn it into a dictionary, a proper dictionary. json.load will take an object. That means a file hand, like a file you open, the contents of a file you open. We'll look at it, and if it's a JSON, it will turn it into a dictionary. If it's an array, it will turn it into a list. If it's an integer, into an integer, right? If that makes sense, yeah, json.load is only for when you reference the content of a file, okay? For that to make more sense, I'm gonna go into it because it's important. Look what I do if I take here type, and I put file type, right? I'm gonna put here print so we can see it. Notice this. When I open the file with this method, I'm gonna say, okay, this file, this is where it's located, right? In this case, in the desktop, so I don't have a full path. It's in the desktop where my script is. My file and my scripts share the same directory. That's what I should have said, right? I'm gonna open it as read, and then this operation, the object to access all that, is gonna be named file, okay? And if I go and print the file type, let me erase all of this so we don't get too cluttered. There we go. Whoop. Notice here, see the class, oops, class is input output text IO wrapper. You saw that? Like file, the type of file, it's not a string, right? It's a method to access the contents of a file. So if you're dealing with opening, you need opening a file that has JSON or anything else in it, use load. If you're dealing with a variable that's a string that has JSON in it, then you use load without the S. If that makes sense, give me a 1. Okay, I see 1 at least. At least somebody got it. Okay, I see more ones. Okay, awesome. Okay, so you want to explain, again, kind of off track, but I think what's important so you know the difference. Load and load. So you load for a file, load S or load string when you're opening a variable. Okay, now, so we got our dictionary, so it's properly loaded thanks to the method. All right, we know it's a dictionary, and we printed the dictionary. Now we're gonna iterate within the values of that dictionary, okay? So let's do that right now. What am I doing here? I'm looking using the items method that we discussed, the chapter discussed, right? So for every key value per dictionary, here it is, key value. I want you to print them out so we can see them. Oh, and after I print out the key value pair, I'm gonna give it a space here. Like I'm gonna print like an empty, like a space. So that way it kind of separates the key values from each other. So they're not all together, easier to understand. So look at this. You see that? You got key value, key value, key value. And this is something interesting. Look at device properties. Device property is the key. And the value is another set of what? Key value pairs, another JSON in it. You saw that? Okay. Now, this is where what we discussed with loads is going to come into play. Okay. The way you well, let me just comment this so we can do the explanation properly. Comment this, comment this, comment this. Okay, now I'm gonna uncomment the block because that's the one we're gonna run. Okay, look at this. Again, for key value in dictionaries, I'm interested in the first run date key. And here, after I did my research and look at the contents of my JSON file, look, I found here first run date key, and it has what it looks like a Unix epoch date stamp. Okay, I want that. I want to show that in my report. So if key, right, is the same as first run date key, what do I want? I just want the value. And here we're using an F string to print that out. I think this should be familiar to you because it's nothing new. It's nothing that we haven't done before in regards to seeing what the contents of a variable are, if they're equal or the same or contains that, and then printing out a variable using an F string. Now, I'm interested now in the contents within device properties. And this is a little bit, oops, this is a little bit harder, right? Because if I put value, guess what I get? I get this whole thing. And I might not want to print the whole thing. I might want to only print the value for OS or the value for browser or the value for client version. Maybe I don't want them all. How do I go about extracting only the key value pairs of a nested JSON? How do I do that? Wait, take into account that in this case, and I'm gonna actually here, I'm gonna actually put here type. Yeah, okay, this is not on the script, but I think this will really illuminate the whole concept. I'm gonna run this. Notice this. Class string, you saw that? When it gets to device properties, right? When you load it, it's actually loading a string. I mean, not well, let me, this is bad. Let's go back. I apologize for that. I should put this on the top. Hold on. There we go. There we go. And actually, let me just also put this one too, because why not? This one. And this one. Okay, let's run it now. I apologize for that. There we go. So look at this. The value, when you pull it out of the JSON, is a string. You see here, class string. This is a string. This is not a dictionary yet. So if we want to turn it into a dictionary to actually address the value of the keys, we need to use json.loads, okay? So we can do that, okay? And that's pretty much it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and after I do the loading valuation, I'm gonna then show you what's the type of that variable that's receiving the now loaded dictionary. Oops, one more. There we go. All right, so notice this, see? And ignore the space, but you got a string, it's a string, but then after I do JSON loads, it turns into a what? Into a dictionary. If that makes sense, give me a one. Let's see if this updates. Okay. And I know there's a lot of concepts not in the book, but I think they're really important because when you're dealing with JSON, you're loading, you're deserializing your JSON to a dictionary, and sometimes the values in it, it will interpret them as strings. You might need to then do a load S to up them also as dictionary so you can address them and actually came out with the content. So with that big long explanation, let's get this running properly. And that will be that for today. And I know I went over the 30 minutes, but we're done. And then we can get some questions. Okay, make this pretty. I don't need the type right now, but can you see how type is so useful to kind of get a sense of how the variables are being moved, what different types are we're ascribing to them? I think it's super useful. So let's run this. All right, so notice I go through my dictionary, pulling the key value pairs. If it finds this key, it will just print me the value because it's at that first level. It's not incepted. It's not a JSON inside the value of a key. But this one is, it found the key device properties. I know that what it will pull out a string. So I have to use json.loads to make sure I do that conversion, that deserialization from a JSON object to a dictionary. And that dictionary is gonna be here called inner key, okay? And then we're gonna do our prints, for example, operating system. We're gonna call the newly dictionary we just deserialize from the value, and then call we're gonna call OS and show me that value, and call browser and show me that value, and call device and show me that value. If you go back to the JSON, you will see it here. Actually, this is hard to see. Let me print it out on its own. And then we can make the comparison, and that will be it. Print value. And then give me some space so we can see it separate. Okay, you see that on the top is our string or our string that's turned into a dictionary. Notice you see OS, that's our key, and the value is iOS. So I'm gonna call it by the key, OS, and the value, here it is, iOS. We're gonna call browser, that's my key. The value should be Discord iOS. And here it is, Discord iOS, and so forth down the line, okay? If we're tracking, give me another one, please.
Briggs had a question for you on the loads.
Sure.
So in your first example, you had x equals, and you put a string that had the proper format of a dictionary. When you do json.loads, it loads it and of course detects it as a dictionary. My first question is, why is it detecting as a dictionary? And the reason I have that question is because your next item that you loaded, the value is a numeric sequence with no quotes whatsoever, meaning that should be an integer. Why is it not detecting as an integer if there was nothing? Because if the first one detects as a dictionary because of proper formatting, why is the number sequence not detecting as an integer?
No, I follow. Well, let's see here for a second. Let me show you here. Okay, can you see the string here? It's kind of hard to see, but let me see if I can go all the way to the end. Device ID, vendor, here we go. So I think here it is. So this is the device property is the key, and this is the value. How does the value start with what? Can you see it?
Yeah, this is not the one that I was talking about. It was something else. I think it was last changelog.
Last changelog?
Or something like that, because the answer to whatever it was a numeric figure. Like it was just a number.
Well, no, it was a string.
Okay, then I'm not sure then.
Remember, what defines if something's a number or not is not the characters, right? Like
no, it's the quotations. I know the quotations, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I thought I saw no quotations. So that's why.
Gotcha.
So I'm sure I just missed it.
Well, and no, but you bring an important point for the whole class, right? You can't do this blindly. When you find a JSON file that has data that's important to your case, you need to sit down before you start coding and understand how the data is organized, right? Like in this case, you'll see it's a dictionary, but some of the values are defined as strings, even though it's numbers in it, right? So you might need, depending on what you're doing, you might need to do a load S to get the proper type or the proper whatever it is to load. Sometimes you might even do it yourself, right? Maybe you don't want to use json.loads. Maybe you want to code it yourself. If it's a string, change it into an int. I don't know. But it's important for you to understand how your data is organized, structured, so that you can apply the proper tools to make it, parse it correctly. Does that make sense?
It does. And then jumping back to my initial question,
Mm-hmm.
is the formatting of the file itself. So I understand that you said json.loads, but it's, maybe I'm wrong here. The precursor to the dot doesn't matter. You could name it.
It matters. It matters. So
it does this time. It does matter. Okay. So does the interpreter know that if it sees colon, if it sees value colon value comma, that it's a dictionary, or is loads just going to try and load it as a dictionary first, and then it's going to try and load it as something else? How does it know?
well, how the interpreter works behind the scenes, to be honest, I don't know. Now, that being said,
Okay.
based on my usage, what I think happens is, and I'm really, qualifying myself so I don't say something wrong. And then Alex told me that. Well, in my use, what it seems is that, first of all, you call json.load because you're saying, okay, from the library JSON, I'm gonna call the method load, right? If I had made import asterisk, import the whole thing, then I might not need to add the JSON before. And that comes from the first class, but that's neither here nor there. JSON is the library. I'm gonna use the method load and then apply it to the handler call file. So that's why what's before the dot is important. In some other instances, you might have, for example, your variable name, your dictionary, and then dot method. And then because you're applying that method to your variable. So it depends.
Okay.
You might be saying, okay, from this library, I want to apply this to file, or like down here, dictionary is my dictionary, right? But this is my variable name, and I'm going to apply items to it. Does that make sense?
Right.
So,
Yeah,
it depends. But if I put something else here, it's not going to be right. If I put something here that's not JSON, it's not going to work.
Okay, I think that makes sense for me.
No, and your questions are fantastic because, again, you need to understand your data structure. If you don't understand your data structure, you're kind of blind. And I'll tell you, I'll go further. Sometimes you will need to create data on your phone. I'm talking about phones here, but it could be computers, whatever it is. Create data. So then when the JSON file that you discover or that you find, the data, what data it was because you put it there. And then you'll understand how it got there. And I'm saying that because when you take JSON and deserialize it to work with Python, when you serialize it, it might be different. And this is way more advanced in regards to how to add metadata to your JSON files. And that's not relevant for forensics per se, like for parsing. But I'm saying that because you need to create your own data, see how that data is reflected in the JSON, so then you can confidently parse it. Does that make sense? Like your chats, you want to make sure that they land in the proper key and value, and not make assumptions. And make sure that if they landed as what? As a string, as a list, because it could be a list with your chats in it. I don't know, right? So you need to make those tests, understand the file, and then you code to parse. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me a 1.
Alex, I just have one other comment on the on the JSON loads.
Yes.
So the file itself, the JSON string, is a standard format. So it can parse it. You can do it yourself as well. I've written
That's correct.
simple JSON parsers, but
That's
you can
correct.
just parse it yourself. But the library is doing it for you. So it just knows that this layout is JSON based on the brackets and all the other stuff. So you just have to recognize the format when you look at it to load it into there. And if it's not that format, it may just default to a string or to some other format as well.
Which you have the perfect segue. I appreciate that. It's like we planned it. Let me show you that. Look at this. This is the chats that are kept in Discord in an iOS device. Notice how it starts. It starts with a what? With a bracket, right? Can anybody type in the chat what file structures in Python are defined with brackets? An array, that's true. But how do we call arrays in Python? List. Perfect. A list, which is precisely what we just heard, right? You look at the file, you say, oh, this is a list. When I do JSON loads on it, JSON load, because we're going to be reading from the file, JSON load, we're going to receive, the variable receiving that will be a list. Does that make sense? And this is the homework I got for you today. I'm going to give you, let me see, should I give you a heads up? No, I'm not going to give you a heads up. Right. So don't cheat and go to the video when I post it and then look at my script because, don't be cheaters. What I want you to do is to load this file, and it's gonna be loaded as a list. You know already how to pull stuff from lists. What I suggest you do, remember, a list is a sequence of related data, right? What I suggest, to give you a heads up, figure out how long that list is, which, which that will tell you, just by looking at this, you can tell that each, for example, if I click here on the, I don't know if you can see it, but you see a little yellow coming up in my IDE. It tells me from this beginning squiggly bracket where the ending part is. You see that? So it ends over here, and there's a comma. So this will be list index location 0, right? And then from this down to the other squiggly here will be index location 1, because it is a list. So figure out how many items that list has, and then see if you can, if it's a dictionary that's in it, can you load that in, right? And how will you do that? And then after you load it, this is what I want you to do. I want you to find the chats, okay? And for the chats, and again, don't feel bad if you cannot do it, because it's kind of short notice, like from here to Thursday, it's kind of tough. But at least load the file, at least be able to make sure that you can point the list to the screen, and then try if you can to pull out the chats. For example, pull the author, right? And pull username. We want that. We put, I think, chat here. It's not called chat, it's called content, I think. Content, there we go. So get to the key content. I want that value. In this case, the value is 4, 5, 6, whatever. But I want, let me put content again here, content. So let's look for one that's pretty, some emojis there. This what you see here is emojis. We want a good sentence. So there we go. Look at this one. Content. How are you? You saw that? So I want you to load that list using json.load, count, or make sure that you have an idea how many different distinct JSONs we have, load those, and then try to get to the content where the chat is. Try to get to the author and the username, okay? This will require some research.
And where's this Discord's _ chat JSON?
I'm gonna post it on the Discord channel in the next 3 minutes whenever we're done here, and then you can pull it from there. Another clue is to make sure when you address, let me say it this way. Remember, dictionaries, you get to the locations not by indexing, but by key name. Just think of that. If you have nested keys, you might need to address a key and a key and a key and a key. And if that doesn't make sense, that's okay. This is part of your self-growth. Do some research on that, okay? Is the homework kind of clear? If it makes sense, give me a 1.
I'm gonna make one more comment on why you have JSON up right now.
See, please.
So if you look at his values, you notice the false nulls and then the numbers, which are just numbers. Those are parsed that way. But if you notice some of the numbers, like the ID actually has quotes around it, it's a number, but it's gonna read as a string.
Yep.
Just be aware of that if you have a number, you expect a number, but it comes out as a string, it's because it was in quotes in the JSON. So you might have to manually convert those, where all the other ones that are already written as numbers in the JSON will come out as numbers. So just be aware of that when you're looking for it.
That's, again, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Let me give you the opposite example. Look at this size here. You see there, size? The value is an actual number, right?
Yep.
And there is a method called str that you can turn your string in, int, your string into an integer, for example. So, and we'll discuss that in next class, but that's important, which is, if, at least for the assignment, let's say you think channel ID is important, right? What I'm asking you to do is just print it on screen. If that's the case, then it doesn't matter if it's an integer or a string. Who cares? You want to see the characters, right? But if I were to do math with this, I need to turn it into an integer. If I'm gonna add, subtract, you cannot add or subtract from a string, because a string is not a number; it's just a string. It's a series of characters, like we just heard. But for now, I just want you to load it. Open the file, load this content, which will be a list, and then I want you to make sure that you go and address each part of it and pull out the chats and pull out the username. And if you're successful, do more, pull more stuff out and just show it to the screen. And if we do that, we're going to be successful with the assignment, the advanced assignment. If you're not able to do it, that's okay. at least be able to open the file and show the list. If you're able to do that, you get a passing grade. All right. Right. Any other comments? Because I took the whole hour, and I apologize.
I have a question that's not about Python. It's just a logistics question. Is anyone here not in Discord? And if so, you can message me privately so I can resend you the link, or send you the link. That would be helpful. I mean, helpful for you more than anything.
All righty. So, anything else? I got my kid is visiting again. So.
Michael, while you're talking.
Yes, you have to be quiet, okay?
Michael.
All righty. So I'm gonna stop the recording.
The creepiest whisper ever. I'm like, so sorry. Like, what is that? I thought that was coming from my office.
I have one more thing to
Okay.
talk.
It's my little gremlin.
Michael, why are you wearing your headphones?
Sabi, you have to be quiet. All right. So let me stop recording. Thank you, everybody.